spoke nasty things about the king, he would dissolve Parliament. Just dissolve them. Or worse, take somebody's head. But then with the recognition of the right to petition, Parliament had to talk about these. What good is the right to petition for redress of grievances if Parliament couldn't talk about it? And then what good is the right to petition for redress of grievances if people couldn't start writing about them? Prior to this recognition of the right, people were prosecuted for seditious libel, for saying bad things about the government. And then, of course, what good's the right to petition for redress of grievances if people couldn't assemble and talk about their grievances and prepare these petitions? So the right to peaceably assemble derived from and that pre-existing right was necessary to protect it. So you learn all these wonderful things by reading these two historical reviews. So this is what we've been doing. Many people have petitioning the government for redress of grievances for many years. We can only talk about our record. What have we done to establish this record? Remember the founders had a record? They laid it out. They petitioned for years, 11 years, and their petitions were falling on deaf ears or worse. And then they decided, okay, we're free people. We need to get together and talk about this. And so what have we been doing? And when I say we, it's a nationwide organization with the participation of thousands, tens of thousands of people across the country. We have been petitioning for redress of grievances. We've been going to court, petitioning the judiciary. We've been petitioning every member of Congress, and we have been petitioning the executive branch. It all started in 1995 when we petitioned over the bailout of the Mexican peso. Prior to this, I mean, this was the first time the executive branch ever bailed out anybody without even going to Congress. First time, right there. And we said, well, gee, there's no authority for this. Where is it in the Constitution? Where is it? So we went to court. And Janet Reno responded with a motion to dismiss, saying, on the basis of sovereign immunity, saying we don't have the right to sue the government. And we prevailed on that. We got them to withdraw that defense. But then the courts dismissed it for lack of standing, even though it was a constitutional challenge, and even though we took the time to get 12 plaintiffs who owned shares of stock in Federal Reserve banks. They had standing. If Mexico didn't pay the money back, then those Federal Reserve banks would take a hit, and the shareholders would take a hit. Of course they had standing. Of course the outcome of the court's decision is going to affect them, up or down. And besides, there might be future bailouts. So it's important to get this issue settled now, right? It's a constitutional challenge. No standing. We don't want to hear the case. Very politicized judiciary. Very corrupt judiciary. And in 1999, the bombs, I was on the way down to the studio in Albany for the talk show I was doing, and the bombs were falling on the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. So I got on the air and I asked, who made this decision? The audience said, the president. Get your Constitution out. Who's supposed to make the decision? Congress. Did they? No. What are we going to do about it? We're going to sue. The audience. And so we sued. We sued the president, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the Secretary of Defense. With the assistance, always with the assistance of constitutional scholars, we prepared these petitions. And so we went to court, but we knew the standing doctrine. We knew the court, abuses the standing doctrine. We might dismiss this case on the basis of no standing. The outcome of the court's decision isn't going to affect any of you, so, get out of here. And so we put the word out. We said, has anybody owned any land over there in Yugoslavia where these bombs are falling? Certainly you have standing. The outcome of this case, we can either stop these bombs or keep them going. It's going to be up to this lawsuit. Certainly you have standing. Within 2 days, we heard from a Greek Orthodox priest in Lower Manhattan who said, we have a young man in our congregation who just graduated from Fordham Law School, studied constitutional law, says, you're absolutely right. The Constitution doesn't defend itself. That's our job. And he and his sister owned land in Montenegro and Belgrade, and his grandmother was sitting in an apartment in Belgrade. Certainly he has standing. They have standing. So they wanted to be plaintiffs in the case. And then we recognized that the government must be calling up reserve units of aircraft engine mechanics and pilots to make all this happen over there, right? So we put out the word, anybody out there in a reserve unit that's been called up or might be called up, Within 6 minutes, somebody from the 109th Air National Guard stationed at Schenectady Airport called into the show, said, I've been listening to this show for months, you're absolutely right, the Constitution doesn't defend itself, it's not going to get defended unless we do it, we've got to hold them accountable, we've got to hold their feet to the fire, I'll be a plaintiff. Because I'm in a unit that's about to be called up. And then we had a couple of pilots who were flying commercial for U.S. Air who had recently retired from the Air Force as pilots, and they may be called up. So we thought we were doing pretty good shape on the standing issue, making it hard for them to dismiss this case on the basis of lack of standing, force them to dismiss it on some other ground. And the case dismissed it on the basis of lack of standing. We've been petitioning for redress of grievances repeatedly on the government's imposition and their enforcement of this direct unapportioned tax on labor. These are not questions we had, these are questions that other people have. And we thought that they should be answered, so we've decided to help them get their questions answered. And been petitioning, but these petitions, when you go to court, that's one thing. You do the research, you write the briefs, you go into court, you state your case, you present your evidence. The other side, their responsibility is to present their evidence, to refute our evidence, offer their own, and then it's up to a neutral arbiter, like a judge, to find the truth. But when you petition the judiciary and you petition the executive, our petitions take a little different form than a complaint that you file in a court case. We treat them as depositions. If you've ever been in a civil or criminal case, you know that each side has the right to ask the other side any question, and as long as the question relates to the subject matter involved in the suit, they're obligated to respond because each side has the right to get the evidence that the other side is going to use against you, so that they can prepare their case and everything can go smoothly, before the judge and before the jury or whatever. And so we see these as depositions, like we're in a deposition. We're asking the government, the other side, questions, and we know the answers to those questions. We don't ask questions that we don't know the answer to. So these are statements of fact. Every question is a statement of fact preceded by the words admit or deny. So every one of these petitions, other than those that go to the court, but every petition served on every member of Congress and the President asks us a set of questions. Admit or deny this, admit or deny this. So there's 29 of these, or 53 of these, or 89 questions. Admit or deny this, admit or deny this. And all of the questions fall in two categories. This is what you're doing, this is what the Constitution requires. So answer the questions. And they don't. So we petitioned the government for redress of grievances on the direct unapportioned tax on labor. In October of 2002, the President sent, or in September, he sent over, months before we went into Iraq, the President sent the Iraq resolution over to Congress to be passed. If passed, it would have Congress saying to the President, it's your decision if we're going in there and when. There's nothing in the Constitution that authorizes one branch to transfer its power that we gave it to another branch. And yet that's what this Iraq resolution was meant to do. And so it was sent over to Congress. It fell to the House of the National Relations Committee, chaired by Henry Hyde. He set October 2nd and 3rd of 2002 to debate this. Still months before we went into Iraq. Ron Paul was on the committee. His turn came to speak on October 3rd. Ron Paul stood up and said, hey, I have a substitute amendment for a substitute resolution. If you pass this, you will be declaring war. This is what you should be debating, not whether or not you're going to give the President the authority to decide. And he did a good job of defending the War Powers Clauses, quoting the Federalist Papers and Madison, and making his point. And then when he was finished, Henry Hyde said, quote, events have overtaken the Constitution. These clauses, the Constitution, in his words, anachronistic and inappropriate. That's not how you change the Constitution. The Constitution has Article 5. It lays out the procedure for changing the Constitution. You don't change it by simply ignoring it over and over again. And yet this is what they do. So we petitioned for redress of that. We decided that we would serve that petition on, we prepared it, and we served it on every member of Congress on November 8th. It's not an easy thing to do, to go serve 535 members of Congress spread out over 6 Senate and House office buildings, multiple floors. But we did it on November 8th. We had people come in from around the country to assist us in serving those, all to build a record. And we said in those petitions for redress that the people would be gathering on the National Mall on November 14th. And we said to